Hello, welcome to my YouTube. Welcome to this new segment, I guess. I'm going to call it Rough Around the Edges because people say that I'm rough around the edges, and this is certainly going to be rough around the edges. The reason that I've started this is because all content, everything that you see everywhere is scripted. It's really well thought out. It's edited. Even when you see stuff that's, it's quite just talking to camera and it seems like it's quite natural. There's been a lot of thought goes into it. And quite frankly, I'm just a bit fed up of it. It seems that everybody's terrified to have a real conversation. All thoughts need to be edited and things like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I've literally written a couple of notes in my notes section in my phone so that I've got things to cover. But the idea of this is it's got minimal edits. All I'm going to cut out is the ums and ers and ahs so that you don't listen to me just making loads of noises for 10, 15 minutes. And I wanted to share things. I wanted to give my perspective on things, my opinions on things, the good, the bad and the ugly. So please don't think this is just going to be a rant for 15 minutes, because it's not. I mean, it might be. Depends where we go. But that's not my intention. I don't just want to talk about loads of negative things, but I want, I'll talk about current affairs, things that are going on in my life, things that are going on in the world, things that we're seeing on social media, trends. Just be a little bit rough and ready and raw. That is the idea. I toyed with unfiltered, but that just sounds like some angry man with a microphone that would call it that. So, like me, this is rough around the edges. So let's start. Let's start with some positive stuff, because there's always negative stuff going on in the world. You may or may not know, in October I was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy and heart failure. Kind of came out of the blue. Basically means my parts of my left ventricle and right atrium have dilated, which means they've got bigger. The walls of the heart have got thinner, and my blood pressure has dropped. And it means that I've not been able to exercise. I've been getting put on medication over the last 6 months, really. Tests, MRI scans, echocardiograms, ECGs, X-rays, blood tests, all sorts of stuff going on. And they've added more and more medication every couple of weeks. And they had to take a bit of a step back a while ago, because the medication lowers your blood pressure. All heart medication lowers your blood pressure, because most people struggle with high blood pressure. My blood pressure is already really low, so certain medications they were adding, it was making me feel really lightheaded, so we had to dial things back. Anyway, we finally got on all the meds, and I went to the doctors yesterday at the time of recording this. It was Monday. I went to the cardiologist on Monday, and my blood pressure had been 90/60, which is very low. It's supposed to be like 120/80 is a normal healthy blood pressure, but mine had gone up to 110 rather than 90. So big win. Big win, because I've not been able to train. And, I've been going to the gym for a long time. I don't particularly like the gym. I know I go to the gym a lot. I want to spend as little time in the gym as possible. But what I do love is the feeling that you get from the gym, the confidence, the energy. And that's obviously been missing. And it's kind of been like not being able to brush your teeth. And it's been a long time since I've not been able to train, and I'd forgotten what that felt like. Anyway, he's told me that I'm allowed to go back to the gym, but only train at like a 6 out of 10. So I can go for a jog, I can go for a run, I can lift weights, but only at a 6 out of 10. Because the thing is, if I lift weights or train too hard, for most people it'll make their blood pressure go up. It could make my blood pressure go down. And if my blood pressure goes down, my heart's going to stop. And if my heart's going to stop, you don't need to be a cardiologist to know that ain't good. So that was the good news. That was the good news. Recently went on a trip to Miami, which had been planned for ages. It was for a conference. It was for a coaching conference. And I saw some friends out there who I've not seen for a while, and some of them who've lived in Florida for a while. And I found myself speaking to people who had these wild, just spouting wild shit. An example, we kind of got talking about the state of the world, as you do when you go for dinner. And, there were people there who I did know, there were people there who I didn't know. And one of the things that came up was, what about the mass stabbings in London? How the fuck do you have a mass stabbing? Like, you can't. You can stab a couple of people at a time, which is not good. Don't get me wrong. But it's really important that you fact check bigots. Now, I don't know if the comment section on Instagram is the place to do that, but if you hear people talking, ask them, like, where have you got that information from? Like, what exactly is a mass stabbing? Because people just regurgitate shit that they hear online. There was something about, they were talking about, there's no-go zones in London. I said, have you ever been to London? And I'm not London's biggest fan. No, never been. So how do you know there's no-go zones? And which there isn't, right? There might be, as with all towns and cities, there might be areas that someone might be less inclined to go to at certain times of day. Is that not true the world over? That's true in like parts of West Yorkshire where I live. There'll be places where you might want to go or frequent less. So fact check bigots, because a little bit of very simple logic and questioning was like just brought everybody's argument down. There was people slagging Keir Starmer off. Listen, I am not a Keir Starmer fan. I voted Labour. I did not know they were going to do what they've done. They're essentially behaving like Tories. I come from the north of England. I won't be voting Labour again, I can tell you that. But that said, they were talking about him when he was a barrister, right? And they said, oh, he helped such and such get off with this thing. And I said, that's his job. This is literally his job. This is literally a barrister's job, is to help someone, is to defend a defendant. And they were like, oh yeah. It's baffling to me that people have lost the art of critical thinking. Like the phrase mass stabbings. Now, maybe they've confused that with there has been a lot of stabbings. That's very different. It's very different. And you might sit there and go, oh, that's semantics. Well, words matter. Words do matter. So, yeah, I mean, I would genuinely, I keep saying genuinely, as if I'm trying to convince you. I would generally try to take people at their word and believe something. But just a little bit of light research, often you can go find like articles from reputable sources. You can find things, and don't just use Google's AI summary at the top for your information. Like, go actually find it. We've literally got the internet in our pocket, and people don't use it, or people use it to manipulate the point that they want to get across. Shame on you if you're doing that. Shame on you. And maybe I'm in the minority in taking people at face value and taking people at their word. Generally, I want to see the good in people, because and the reason why is because I think if you don't, I mean, it's just a terrible world that we live in, isn't it? Generally, trying to take people at their and trusting people that are good. But I understand why people don't, and I've got a theory about this. I've got a theory why people don't trust people like they used to, and it's because people don't go out anymore. People don't go out, and I'm talking about, yes, drinking, but also not drinking, just being in public with other people. Keep themselves to themselves. They're very insular. Hear me out on this. So if you are sitting in your house all day and you're watching, whether it's YouTube, whether it's TV, the news, and we are constantly bombarded by the news, by the way. Remember, like, think back to, even my parents, when they were growing up, there was the newspaper that you could avoid, and then there was the 6 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news. All of the times people are usually working or in bed, right? That's the news. It's constantly on your phone. Go on Twitter, go on social media. I mean, hopefully no one's still using Twitter, because it's like the Wild West of the internet. But you're getting notifications about news. You are constantly bombarded with news. And how often are you getting good news? How often is saying, cat was rescued from a tree, old lady was helped across the road? Like, that's not the news that we're getting. So you are constantly bombarded with people being blown up, murdered, killed, gone missing, abducted, taking money off people, stealing, yada, yada, yada. So if that is like, being whacked constantly, and someone whispering in your ear going, people are bad, people are bad, people are bad, people are bad. And then what do you have to counteract that? You go out and you see graffiti, you go out and you see public services being stripped back, people are overworked, underpaid, they're pissed off, they're rude. Some people might be rude, you know, and people, that might be the case anyway, but you don't have anything to counteract that. Think about when you used to go out, and now this might be years ago, this might be decades ago, this might have been weeks ago. Think you go out, maybe you have a few beers, maybe you end up in a bar or a club and I'm just using going out and having a drink as an example here. Obviously there's other ways to go out, but you would bump into someone and you go, oh, sorry, and you get talking to someone, or someone says, you go to the bar and it's your turn to wait and someone cuts in and they go to serve them and they say, no, he's first or she's first. Little things like that. When you meet people, you speak to people, you interact with other human beings who you don't know, and you come away from it generally thinking they were a decent person. They had something nice to say. And that is like the other side of humanity. But it feels like at the minute you are just bombarded with news, twats on social media who manipulate things for videos and views and likes and stuff like that. And like, what's the antidote to that? Because people are stuck and they're being insular, and then they get really angry, and then they start saying, "Oh, you know, this woke generation." What even is woke? What even is it? I actually asked on my stories, "Can you please give me a succinct definition of what woke is?" And I'll put it on the screen here. I'll do a screen record, but it was all things like, you know, being considerate of other people, being, you know, having empathy for someone who might have a different perspective on life to you do. There was that kind of angle, which I would probably generally agree with. People who didn't see it as an insult. People who were like, I'm proud to be woke. I'm proud to be switched on. And then there was the other end of it where it was like political correctness gone mad. Do you remember political correctness in the early 2000s? I was growing up through school then. And those kinds of people who political correctness gone mad wankers, they're the same people who say you can't say anything anymore. If you ever hear anybody say you can't say anything more, I want you to ask them what specifically they can't say. Because the only things that you can't say is hate speech, is something that's racist, misogynistic or homophobic. And usually, especially in 2025, it's got to be relatively, you know, pretty overtly one of those things. So when someone says you can't say anything anymore, that for me is like a big flashing neon sign above their head saying, I'm a massive wanker, stay away from me. Because you can pretty much get away. You only have to look at some of the shit that people have said over the last few years, whether it's about trans people, whether it's about gay people, whether it's about, we had the guy on GB News saying that gay people were paedophiles. Like, nothing's come of it. And they did a petition, and they did, like, that is literally hate speech. So you can literally say what you want. We live it. It's like the Wild West. There does not seem to be any recourse. You know, on the internet, well, a couple of random strangers message someone and say you're a terrible person for saying something there is no recourse. So those people, they're just wankers. They're just wankers. If someone calls me woke, I'm like, yeah, I am, and I am awake. I'm awake to things that are going on around me, to shit that people are saying when they're espousing stuff like mass stabbings and you can't say what you want anymore. Like, those people are idiots. And we should call them such. I know there's a George Bernard Shaw quote that says, don't wrestle with pigs, because when you wrestle with pigs, you'll get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it. There is an element of that. But also, I mean, I don't know. Like, they talk about, there's this thing now called fuck you politics, where you just, instead of just trying to explain things, you just do what people on the kind of far right do, and they just go, I don't care. Like, this is what I believe. This is what I'm saying. Even if you've just fundamentally proved that everything I've said is wrong, fuck you. And people are maybe starting to do it a bit on the left. You know, don't engage in people who are willfully ignorant. I guess. See what I mean about rough around the edges? Like that has just kind of meandered. We started on my heart and ended up on fuck you politics. Listen, I'm going to do one of these every week. I'm interested to know your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the format. Let me know what you think of the content. If you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to delve into a little bit, let me know. Like, subscribe, do all that kind of jazz. And I guess I'll see you next week.